right, hello again, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Megan Mendiola. I'm a regional marketing coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have JMT's very own Andy Harleman here with us to lead us in today's webinar over how JMT and Vena can ease your budgeting and planning woes. I want to share just a couple of housekeeping notes with you all before I turn it over to Andy. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please go ahead and submit those into the Q&A section on your control panel. We'll go ahead and save those all until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to submit those as you think of them. Also, just a reminder that we will send you both the slides and recording for today's webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. And now I want to take a minute to introduce Andy Harleman to you all. Andy lives in St. Louis, and he is the Director of Sales here at JMT. He also has an extensive nonprofit background as well. He helped found a social services agency and served as an administrative director there. He's also served on the governing board of a nonprofit in St. Louis, and he has been consulting to nonprofits since 2006. And so now, Andy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Megan, and just confirm you do see the picture of me in the screen and everything.
Yes, I do, Andy.
Very good. And just for everyone's benefit, all of us who've been, working from home and dealing with COVID, I just want everyone to know that since March, I have gotten up every morning and dressed exactly as you see me in that photo. So fear not, I'm dressed that way now, I promise. So let's get started. Let me just get going. So the first thing I want to do here is make sure that everyone on this call understands who JMT is and kind of frame the context for why we are recommending Vena and who, a little bit about our background so you understand what our recommendation for Vena means in the nonprofit world. So JMT, first and foremost, is an independent firm whose sole mission is to work with nonprofit organizations. We have thousands of happy clients. We're known for rapid and affordable implementations of different finance and back office, as we say, tools for nonprofits only. So for example, accounting software, ERP as they call it, budgeting and planning tools like what we've got to talk about today. And the bottom line with JMT is all we do is nonprofit, and we're small enough that we can provide exceptional and very personalized service, but we're large enough to handle any size or complexity of implementation. We were built by a team of people. We are a team of people who are dedicated to nonprofits, and it all starts with our founder and CEO, Jacqueline Tizo, hence the name JMT. Jackie was herself a finance person in several nonprofits back in her early part of her career. And then in the late 80s, and actually 1991, January, I should say, because we're approaching our 30th year, Jackie said, I'm going to strike out on my own, and I'm going to have my own firm that works just with nonprofits. She had been a customer for quite a few technology implementations, and it's safe to say she was less than blown away by the service that she got, and she felt she could do better. And she felt, most importantly, nonprofits deserve better. And so that was the founding mission. And so we've been doing this ever since. And we have been monitoring the unbelievable changes in the marketplace since then. Think about what technology was like in those days. Jackie talks about DOS-based accounting software. She talks about going to a client's office with a pile of, literally a box of floppy disks that you would insert one after the other, and you would have to wait all day just for the computer to be able to read them and install them in its DOS operating system. We started then, and here we are today in the world of cloud technology. And I hope, for all of our sake, that one day we'll look back and laugh at the primitive cloud technology that we all talked about in 2020, because technology does incredible things, and it's going to keep going. So we've always monitored it, and we always want to bring to nonprofits the very best of what we know is available, and that's really what our mission is. So she founded the company in the New York area where she was working at the time. Since then, we've grown. You can see we have offices all over the place. The green dots roughly approximate where our clients are, but really, we can't show you the whole world. We have clients all over the world. And most of the time, what we do is we come to you. So it doesn't really matter where our physical offices are, we come to you. And these days, we already were doing a lot of remote work prior to March, but with COVID, we have really perfected the craft of doing a lot of the stuff on Zoom. We can't wait for the day when we can come back and see our clients face to face. But until then, we're not going to let this disrupt us. So we work with you wherever you are. And this is just an example of some of the organizations, some of the logos you might recognize of organizations who have entrusted JMT over the years. And I always like this quote because this is one of our clients in a nonprofit in the New York City area who talks about the very fact that JMT understands nonprofits and solely focuses on that and knows the needs of nonprofits really informs all the decisions we make in our recommendations for how we set these systems up for you. And that to him was the most important thing. So as I mentioned, and as I've been saying, JMT is an independent firm. We're not a software publisher. And here's why that should be important to you. A software publisher is in the business of doing incredible, innovative work, creating software and selling subscriptions, right? Their commitment is to that, and they want to have great customers, of course, but our commitment is to you. We have to take that software and not just, quote, sell it to you, but we have to live and help you implement it too. And so that means that we're able to really focus and get to know you better than any software publisher ever could. We curate, so what we do is we monitor all the software publishers that are out there, and we curate the best solution, even if it's a combination of different software technology. For example, we're a big partner with Sage Intacct ERP and with Sage, with Community Brands MIP Fund Accounting as an example. But we're also here to talk today about Vena Solutions. We work with all those tools. So if you have Sage Intacct, for example, and you're happy with that as a general ledger, but you want to look at another tool like Vena for your FP&A, that's what we're here for. We believe in a best-in-class approach. And so we assembled what's really the perfect for you combination of these different partners. So essentially, JMT helps nonprofits across the vast spectrum of all the things in the back office that may affect you, as you can see it represented here on this circle. And then, of course, plugging in the partners that we currently work with. We're here today to talk about this one. That's why I made it bigger, Vena. But as you can see, we work with you across a broad spectrum. So for those of you, I would say to sum it all up about JMT, we really are here for nonprofits, and we work with more than one tool. We understand all these back office processes, and it's really that informs how we help you onboard into this tool. And as you can see here, one of our great clients, John, talks about the onboarding process and how he couldn't imagine implementing some of these great technology tools without JMT. So let's talk about that technology. We've all been through, well, a living nightmare really since March, and I think it's safe to say that we all understand now in 2020 there is no excuse for working with outdated technology. Day after day, I talk to nonprofits who are still on an on-premise system. I just spoke to someone this morning. Due to the fact that they were on an on-premise system, they literally were never able to go and work from home. And they've been very lucky because they're in a remote area and there just aren't very many COVID cases near them, and no one in their office has tested positive. But they literally, their finance team has been working in the office nonstop, just like a regular year, because they had no choice. They simply couldn't get to their accounting software from home. So there's an excuse. I think they all know. There is no excuse, I should say. They're all acknowledging, look, we've got to get on something different because we don't want to go through this again. And so really technology is at the bottom, at the foundation, I should say, of what we're talking about here today. So let's talk about how this technology can help. But first, let's back up and talk about what we have seen in our many years in business with nonprofit organizations. We're going to talk about your nonprofit budget process as we have seen it. We're going to talk about sort of some averages. And we talk first with usually the process of creating a budget. We have seen an average of about 4 to 6 months. We also see what people in nonprofits call collaboration, I put in quotation marks, is really just emailing spreadsheets around in many cases. And, you know, basically everyone gets a spreadsheet. I always say you can always make a PowerPoint deck better if you throw a picture of Oprah in there somewhere. So let's stop here. We're going to try to make this a little bit interactive. Megan has a poll question for you, and I believe it is about how many people are involved in your budgeting process at your organization. Let's just have a little fun, get some interaction going, and see what we're saying. And I'm talking about people that might need to contribute to the creation of the budget is where I'm going with this question. Be interesting to see what kind of results we might get.
Yeah, Andy, so I just launched that poll. You should see it on your screen, and we have a good number of votes coming in already here, so we'll give that a couple more seconds for people to cast their votes. So far, the overwhelming number is 10 plus.
Wow. Well, that's not surprising. I would say if maybe next time we should make the question more like 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus to see how big it gets. Because we do talk to a lot of organizations. It's really fascinating when they talk about one spreadsheet being emailed to 40 different people. and that's the kind of thing we're going to talk about fixing here in the rest of this webinar here today. So how's the results looking now, Megan? You ready to post them?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share them now, but you should see the polling results on your screen. 67% of people said 10 plus. No one said just one, and there was 17% of 2 to 4 and 17% of 5 plus.
Yeah, not surprising at all. And maybe next time we'll try to do it with, we'll break that down more than just 10 plus, because I would be really curious to see if anyone on this call is like 50 plus or anything like that. We do see that sometimes. So let's keep going then. Someone in your finance department, I'm guessing many of the people who've chosen to attend this call here today, I saw some names of people I already know, and I happen to know for a fact that some of you are the very ones who are the lucky ones who get to take those spreadsheets after they've been emailed to 20 program managers and 20 different versions are emailed back to you, and you're the lucky one who gets to spend your time linking it all together, right, into your master giant Excel workbook. And so, we make light of it with this cartoon, but that's really not funny in a major way here. This is the kind of inefficiency that we really want to help you solve today. And it really just comes down to those spreadsheets. So, what we have found this year that's very interesting, of course, is it always happens that things change, right? You lose a grant or you get a grant, or all kinds of things can happen in the world that make you need to recast your budget. But this year we've seen it with COVID that has just been intensified in so many ways. We had a client back in March tell me, hey, listen, we were very fortunate. We got some PPP funds and we also got some other extra funds to help us, but we already had those expenses were already allocated to be paid for by a different grant we had, which expires June 30th. So while it's great to get new money, if I don't spend that other money, then it goes away. And it was a nice problem to have for this nonprofit, certainly better than the nonprofits who aren't surviving. But still, this required a lot of manipulation of the plan to be able to figure out exactly how to move things around to preserve all of that funding. And so that's really the kind of question that we're looking at help you answer today. And so as things change, and your board might need a new plan as soon as possible. And you are the person who has to quickly change all the previous assumptions, collaborate with your suddenly remote workforce. And many of us, thankfully, are able to start. I'm hearing more and more of our clients getting back to the office, but it really depends on where you are, what state you're in. I know in certain places, hotbeds like New York, you're just not seeing it as much. But you also can't afford to waste your time on data collection or data entry. And you really want to be spending your time making strategic decisions and recommendations on that data. But yet, sometimes another assumption change and you have to do it all over again. We were seeing through the COVID times that literally some of these assumptions were changing hourly. It was ridiculous. Sometimes for the better, but still, you get the idea. Doing all of that with a big Excel workbook. So let me go back. Let's do our second poll question here, Megan. Let's ask the question. And this question is about number of Excel sheets. And what I mean is not workbooks, but sheets within workbooks. So if you have one workbook with 15 tabs, that would be 15. So just curious, how many, again, people on the call, how many Excel worksheets does your budget contain? And we have a little bit more granularity to the questions and the numbers on this particular one. But this is, we've done this similar poll question before, and let's see how you compare to previous groups that we've asked this question of. It's one of those things where we always say, look, Microsoft Excel is probably the most ubiquitous, widely used tool in any finance department. And certainly I haven't met a nonprofit finance person yet who isn't a real expert in Microsoft Excel. Give it a few moments for it to come in. How's it polling so far, Megan?
It's going well. I think last time we did have a couple of 50 plus. I'm not seeing any of those yet, but we do have, majority is in 10 to 20. And it looks like we've had a majority of our votes come in now. So Andy, if you're ready for me to share those results, I will.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so you should be able to see the results now. We have majority of 10 to 20 worksheets, but we also have 20 to 30. It has a couple of votes, and then one for 0 to 5. So I think their results are a little different than last time, but still pretty similar, Andy.
Yeah, well, congrats to whoever's 0 to 5, because that's on the low end, and that is a lot more manageable than the poor people who are in that 20 to 30 range. But anyway, thank you. I hope this keeps it a little bit interactive and fun for you. But obviously, this is what we're trying to solve for you today. It's more than just, hey, how do I get rid of Excel problems? But that's a big part of the inefficiency that we see in a nonprofit budgeting process. So let's get on with my presentation here. So back to the question, you have to do all those things we were talking about. Well, no problem with Vena. Vena basically takes all the good things about Excel and gets rid of all the bad things. I was just talking about one of the good things. Everyone already knows how to use Excel. We always say if you know Excel, you're 50, 60% of the way there with Vena. And so essentially, the problem with Excel is things like you don't have workflow, you don't have real collaboration, you got version problems and audit trail problems. You can't really scale it. It doesn't integrate. Its data is stored in the cell of each cell of each sheet, and not really tied to a secure cloud database. Well, all of that is what changes with Vena. You can have workflow, you can have collaboration, you can have version. There is one version of the truth, and that is it. You can do complex modeling and so forth. We're going to get into that here in a moment. It also allows you to make it much easier for your staff. This is an example of an actual annual budget plan in the Vena system, where you're able to set up workflow. As you can see, some of these things here denote workflow. You're actually able to set up workflow, and you're actually able to make it very easy for staff to understand what is in their responsibility and what isn't. And you can then monitor, as we'll show you later, how things are going. Finally, it allows you to take all of that. This isn't just about making a budget. We're going to focus on that today, but this is far more about the strategic decisions you make based on that data, and able to report in ways like what you see here. This is an example of an actual board-ready report right out of the Vena tool. So let me, instead of getting to that, let me go into the system now. Bear with me while I pull this up, make sure I've got it. Here we go. So I logged into Vena Solutions, and I just have to, I went to their browser. You can go to any web browser you prefer. I use Google Chrome, that's what I'm in right now. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. As you can see here, there's a login screen. Now I use Google Chrome, it remembers my name and password, so I'm logging in. And now this is our demo system. And I'm going to click on this contributor tab first. So as a contributor, I'm going to have certain things that I can do, and I'm going to show you that. But I'm going to start sort of with the end in mind. I'm going to start with an example of a report. Actually, I could see the same report from a manager, but let's say I'm trying to get a sense of some data. Let me look at this expense variance analysis report. Now, what I'm going to do, if you're looking quickly, you'll see at the bottom left of my screen, it's going to take an Excel data table and populate it for me. So it's downloading it very quickly here, and it's using the internet to do that, of course. Now I'm just opening this Excel book. Here it is. It's essentially what it's doing is it's loading this Excel template with data straight from the secure Vena database. So I'm going to go ahead and look at one little, this is just a report. I'm going to look at one little section of data. I think I can just keep it where it is. So it's going to load that data because it wanted to ask me. It was using dimensions to sort my data if I wanted to. So let's just say, I'm going to go through a simple exercise here to illustrate the point of how Vena can work for you. Let's say I'm looking at my operating expenses here. And I come down and I find my general operating expenses, and I go down here to recruitment. And I see that I've got a bunch of blanks for these different areas. And let's say for my forecast for Q2, I've got a certain amount there. Let's go in, and I want you to just remember that how this looks. And then we're going to go back over to the Vena Cloud, and I'm going to change something, and then you'll see what happens. So remember, that's a report in the system. But back to being a contributor, let's say instead of getting a Microsoft Excel nightmare workbook emailed to me, I'm a program person, And my job, I am asked by finance to populate my budget, my expenses. In this case, we're going to focus on expenses. And then it needs to flow back into the cloud database and be available for everyone else. So instead of getting an email with an attachment that I download and my own version of Excel that I have to save as an email back, I'm just going to go to this detailed OpEx input. Now watch again. See, it says you want to check this out. What this means is that when I check this out, I am the only person in this organization who now has a certain piece of the data that I am touching. So no one else can change this data as long as I've got this checked out. Think of it like a library. You check a library book out, nobody else can read it while you've got it checked out. And that's good controls here because you don't want multiple people changing the same cut of data, of course, in your budget. So I'm going to check this out. And again, it just loaded it. So I'm pulling this up now. Now this is an Excel sheet, as you're going to see in just a moment, but it is pulling the data from the secure cloud. Now, I'm going to make sure I choose my dimensions that I need for this particular demo. And dimensional chart of accounts, and this works very well with a tool like Intech that has a dimensional chart of accounts structure, or an MIP, you might call them segments, but it really dimensionalizes your data. I'm going to focus on my forecast scenario, and I'm going to focus on my San Francisco entity and hit OK. Now it's loading that data. While it's loading, let me point out something. This is actually my Excel on my desktop. The difference, if keen eyes may have noted, this tab up here, this Vena tab, you load one plugin into your Excel, which takes about 60 seconds to load, and then from then on, you've got it. And all it's doing, the analogy I would use is when you go to a regular website for anything, let's say you go to, I don't know, your favorite online commerce website and you buy something. The web page you're on has fields that you populate. Maybe I want to buy a blouse that's size L, purple color, or whatever. You're populating those data points into fields on your web browser. And then when you hit enter or refresh or whatever, it ties into the cloud database, wherever that might be. This is the same thing. The only difference is the front end, the place where you're entering that data, happens to be Excel. But it ties in securely to the cloud, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to enter my data. So if we go back to what I was talking about before with recruitment, I'm going to do recruitment. And I'm going to go to this one here. And I'm going to put in a number like, let's say, I don't know. Let's say I'm going to do 97,854 as my recruitment expenses. Now that's a big change, isn't it? I can make a comment here. We need to hire some folks. And now I will save this. To make it very simple, I'm just going to do this one entry. But imagine if you have dozens and dozens of entries that you want to make. So as I save this data, I'm going to actually close it first. Well, this is user error. I am not sure what I did. I'm in edit mode. Oh, I know what I did. I opened it. That's an Excel function that I did wrong. But you saw before on that other report that I had up, which is this one here, where I had might have been this one, sorry. Same one, sorry. It is this one. Okay, where I was looking at my recruitment expense, and you saw before this 88,888. Well, that was entered in this same thing here in a previous meeting. And so I was able to very simply just save it, and then it flows through automatically to this report where it resides. I don't have to pass this thing around. It's tied in directly to the Vena database. Now, another thing that happens that's really cool is once that's in there are other things you can do. So again, remember, this is actually a secure cloud database. So it populates actuals from previous periods because I'm able to actually integrate this with my general ledger. There are some tools like Intact that have a pre-built integration with Vena. But there are others that are more, even the old on-premise tools, we can simply point to an Excel output file from one of those and pull the data in so your actuals populate. If I go back over here to my actual, sorry, I keep opening the wrong one, I apologize for that. And if I go back over here and I look at some of these other numbers, let's say here, some other things you can do. You may have noticed that I have some ability to look into some certain other data. And so I can say, click on one of these and look at an audit trail. In this case, there aren't any things showing, but you have your actual ability to see the numbers that are in the system. You have the ability to do drill saves and drill down. So let's say I want to see the saves. Let's see who's changed this data over time. Not on that cell. And then we have the ability to do transactions. We can see actual transactions. These came straight from my general ledger system right into the system. So all of this is happening on an Excel sheet because it's really happening in the Vena cloud on the back end. Again, apologies for the user error here. I didn't check. I had too many security restrictions set up on my Excel before this, and that's my fault. I was supposed to turn some of those off at the top of the hour, and that's my mistake, but I hope you get the idea. This thing can do a lot more than simply emailing around spreadsheets. The other thing that we want to make sure we highlight in this brief time that we have together, if I go back over here to this manager role, you can see something like, here's my NFP budget creation process. This is the actual workflow that I've designed. I can actually move things around and set up different steps and so forth. And this really gives you a visual graphic, but also sets the rules for how your budget is created. We also have our status tracker, and this is the part that I think is really interesting. All those things that you've assigned, you can check on how people are doing. So you send out you ask your 20 program people to enter their data. Well, some of them maybe haven't done it yet. Some of them have, and you can see where it stands. You can see any tasks that are overdue and so forth. So this is a way for you to really monitor it and keep on top of this to make sure that you're not spending your time, chasing around people who don't need to be chased around, and that you are giving little nudges where needed to help manage the staff. So what it really comes down to with all of this is that we really want to help you spend your time on the high value tasks. We always hear this stuff about the Pareto Principle and 80% of your time and the 80-20 rule. So right now, far too many nonprofit finance people we talk to are spending 80% of their time on data gathering and only 20 on that analysis. With this, you would be able to flip that. You won't have to spend your time emailing and receiving versions or doing Excel gymnastics or looking for those dreaded formula errors or checking on the progress because you have a status tracker. And most importantly, you won't have to put off your executive director or your board because you will be on top of the stuff and you will be analytical and strategic. So how can we make this be your reality? JMT has figured a way in the last few months. What we've realized is that we want to make this as easy as possible for organizations. Typically, this involves, an annual subscription and JMT and implementation fees. What we've done now is we have a way that we can do all of this for you for an affordable monthly fee. We will handle the administration of the model for you. We can get people up and running in a very, keep in mind, this would be a very bare bones sort of system, but we could get you up and running in as quickly as 10 days. Some of our clients want to take a little bit more time than that, but we don't want you to feel like, oh gosh, it's going to be a 6-month implementation. No, we can go very, very quickly and we can make this be your reality. So the next step for anyone who's interested in hearing more would be to talk to Megan. Megan, I know you're setting up 15-minute quick assessments with anyone, and your email's on the screen, yeah, as well as your phone number. And I know you're going to say a couple things about how you are going to follow up here, but I just want to end by saying, hey, by Labor Day, this could be you. You could be relaxed. You could be chilling because you don't have to worry about all the Excels that are getting emailed around anymore. So Megan, what would you like to take us to the close here?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And we definitely want to help you feel like that picture. So we definitely want to help that be you. I wanted to say I don't see any questions come through, but if you did have a question after today's webinar, you'll definitely have the opportunity to ask me, because I want to take a minute to tell you how the follow-up process for this is going to look like. So as Andy said, I'll be reaching out to all of you through a phone call following today's webinar, just for a more personalized discussion of Vena and how it may fit your organization's budgeting and planning needs. I'd love to hear from you just more about your organization and share with you a little bit more about Vena. And once we make sure there's a fit there, we can jump into a more personalized discussion about how we can get you up and running very quickly with Vena and go from there. So just be looking out for that phone call from me this afternoon. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all. And the last thing before we close out today, Andy, I wanted to let everyone know we do have another webinar coming up on August 26th over the power of integrating Vena with another one of our software partners, Sage Intacct. So we're looking forward to that one as well, and we definitely recommend getting registered if you were on today's webinar. That webinar is free, and you can register at jmtconsulting.com under the events tab. So again, I'm looking forward to connecting with you all, and that's all I have for today. Andy, is there anything else you want to add before we close out the webinar today?
Just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. I do see we do have a question that came through, so I'll go ahead and answer. I want to respect everyone else's time. If anyone else wants to jump, our feelings won't be hurt. We understand we said it was a half an hour, but I'm happy to stay and answer this question, which is, how does forecasting work in Vena, budget versus actual reporting tied to the GL? Yeah, well, I only showed you obviously the tip of the iceberg. So forecasting is very dynamic and allows you to do, I think it would be fair to say, how wouldn't it work? Because it can do virtually any type of forecasting that you want to do. If you think about what's good about Excel, for example, think about formulas and things that you can use to take a set of assumptions like actuals and forecast them out. All of that is available to you within the system in the same way. So we would love to get together with anyone and show you more about specifically things like concepts like forecasting in the tool. Any other questions?
I think that is all I think that's all the questions. I don't see any more that have come through the Q&A or the chat. But again, just a reminder, I will be following up. So if you did have a question that you forgot to ask or came to you after, no worries, you can definitely ask me that when I follow up. So I think we're good to go. I know we're a little past time. So we just appreciate everyone for joining us today for this presentation. And we hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. And I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.